two more minutes, and then we'll go from there. Right, I've just had one question from one person who's struggling to get on. You should find in the invite that you got, there would be a phone number. Shouldn't need a plus option on the phone, should just be able to type it in as in the 0207 number, and that should work out okay. If you have a go at that should work out okay, but I think what we'll do is we'll carry on and start the webinar. So right, so obviously what we're looking to cover today is to go through some functionality that we've built for OpenClientCheck with a third-party company called GB Group. And basically taking part in this webinar today is myself, Jez Westerman, who is the Head of Business Development for OpenGI. We've got Christina as well, who I'm sure you all know, who's a product manager, and we've got Russell Dixon from GB Group, who is obviously here to talk about the details, any details or questions you've got about the features that they're offering through OpenClientCheck. So just moving on. So the agenda that we're going to be running through, so obviously we've run through the audio check. Just a quick introduction to presenters. Christina, do you need to introduce yourself, or are you as famous as I think you might be?
I think I'm very well known amongst our attendees.
That's good. So maybe Russ, could you just kind of give yourself a quick introduction just before we kind of go into the depth of the webinar?
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone. Obviously Russell Dixon. I'm Business Development Director here at GB Group. So I guess my role in all of this is I guess head up insurance within our business with a specific focus at the moment around identity verification, because it's such a I guess a hot topic, you know, amongst insurers at the moment. So my role in this is really to support obviously Jez, Christina, and the account directors, obviously in understanding our product and supporting moving forwards.
That's great. Okay, thanks very much for that. So if you look at the rest of the agenda, what we're looking at running through, the first thing I'm going to run through very quickly is just a reminder on how OpenClientCheck works at a really high level. This may be completely new to some of you. For some of you, you probably know it already, but it'll be very quick. We'll then go on to explain the new ID check that we've got from GB Group that's built in. This will include a demonstration, for which I'll be handing over to my colleague Christina. And then what we've got after that would talk about what we've done. The other thing that we'd like to also get your opinion on is some things that we might do in the future. It's important to understand that these are potential future developments, but there are other things that we could do, and it would be great to get your opinion on whether or not you think that these would be valuable or not. So that's kind of like towards the end of the webinar. As we go through, from our point of view, anytime you've got a question, if you'd like to type it into the chat interface, and what we'll do periodically through the webinar, we've got kind of place markers where we will be able to field questions, and we can go through those questions and make sure that we've covered them off in the right way. You'll have an opportunity also to respond back in terms of some polls that we've got a little bit later on through the process. So hopefully we should get to the end where we've run through all the presentations, you've had a chance to ask questions, and we've got an idea of what your thoughts are on these topics as we go through. So that's fine. So moving on then. Go on to the next slide here. So we're talking about how OpenClientCheck works. So obviously we're starting from the point of view of the back office. So we've got the client and risk information sent via OCC to the hub. That then queries through third parties. They will send back a score out of 100, that goes back to the back office. Then we then get this idea where we've got either a pass or refer based on the score that comes out of 100. And then basically anything that's either passed or referred is then audited. So the important thing to note is that you can set up multiple checks for the you can set up multiple checks in the back office for things that we're doing like that. Sorry, the slides seem to be having a mind of their own at the moment, don't know why. Anyway, so we can set up multiple checks in the back office. There's lots of different places in the process in new business, MTA renewals, and at kind of client conversion points where we can trigger those lookups. The key thing is that when the score comes back, if it's a high score, which is good, you can train the system to go all the way through without actually needing to see, operators won't see anything. If the score comes back underneath the threshold that you've chosen, then basically a referral screen will display and you can interrupt the process and take action as a result. So this covers everything that we do, from fraud to a Q check to an ID check, and some of the checks that we've got in the pipeline as well moving forwards. So right, we'll move on. So questions at this point then. So just so that we've got a chance, just at a really, really high level, in terms of like OpenClientCheck, are there any kind of broad questions that you've got about it? Just give you a couple of seconds just to have a think about that. Okay, so no questions hopefully is good news. Hopefully that means that you probably already knew that already, which is great. And then what I've got a really quick question moving on. Hold on. We've just got a quick poll. Oh, okay. So we do have one little question. Can we get an email of the slides at the end? Yes, you can. That's absolutely fine. So now what we've got is we've got a poll. So this is just a quick question saying, you know, are you using OpenClientCheck already, just so that we can get a feel for where you are with OpenClientCheck. Lovely. Just give you a few seconds to answer that. That's great. That's lovely. Thank you. So we'll just close that off, and then what we'll be moving on to is far too far. Sorry. GB Group. So what I'd like to do is hand over to Russell, who can explain GB Group in detail. Thank you.
Hi there, everyone again. Yeah, so I guess what I wanted to do before we kind of move on and talk about specifically about how our solution works is just give a quick overview of who we are, because I'm going to assume that there's people on this call that may not have come across us before. So we are we're a £120 million capped AIM listed software business, head office out of Chester. We've grown quite significantly, I guess, over the last 4 years, which is how long I've been working for GB Group, and we're growing in a number of different ways. So we're acquiring companies, we're acquiring product, but all of it is built around a real focus on identity management. So everything that we produce and everything that we do has identity at the core of, I guess, of our solutions and propositions. With regards to ID verification, which is what we're going to talk about today, we've been doing this for about 10 years now. So we were actually the first organisation to bring what you'd consider a fully fledged electronic ID solution to market after we built something for the public sector. And for many years, we're successful across the more regulated markets like financial services and legal, etc. And then over the last couple of years, we've diversified out into what we'd consider the more non-regulated markets, and insurance is one of those. So, our footprint in insurance is growing. which is great. It's growing for lots of different reasons. But we recognised an opportunity with OpenGI and the conversations that we had in the early days with Jez around how we might be able to support OpenGI clients with our technology and set about building this integration, which is great for us, that we can deploy our technology through a software house like OpenGI. So phase one is very much about identity verification. So it's all about being able to verify that an individual is who they say they are, they're the age that they're presenting, and they live at the address that they're providing you with and your rating on. And as you pointed out before, there's some other things which we could look to introduce at some point in the future from that same piece of integration. So ultimately there's 40 different types of checks that sit within our technology. So it's a relationship that we certainly hope will develop into more than just ID at some point. Thanks, Jez.
Okay, next slide.
Okay, so thanks, Jez. So what we've done phase one, very much as I say, around identity verification. So a quick overview of I guess how the technology works. So inside our solution, there's 4 core data sets. There's our proprietary database, which we call National ID Register. It's about 40 million records in there. We also access credit header data and electoral roll data through a relationship, and we also access and hold our own historical electoral rolls. So we roll up the electoral rolls every year. A new one comes out, which enables us to go back. I think we've got 19 years worth of history there now. So those are the 4 kind of key data sets, really, if you like. It gives us a great breadth of data, because each one of those data sets is stronger in certain demographic markets. National ID is a good example. So we built this data set to deliberately target the weak spots around credit data and electoral rolls. So the younger demographics, the financially excluded demographics, which are often a challenge. The National ID Register is very, very strong performance in those particular groups, because it was a data set that was originally built for the payday loans market. So we feel we've got a great breadth of data across those 4 data sets. What happens ultimately is as you key in the customer information, our system works sequentially. So name, address, date of birth information is keyed into OpenClientCheck. That then comes through to us, and the first thing we're trying to do is, can we find an address? Okay. Once we've found the address, we then go away and look for the surname, then we look for the forename, and then we look for the date of birth. So what it enables us to do is to kick somebody out of the process at any point through that sequential matching. So we can get to granularity around specifically what have you matched to and which data set have you matched against, in order to clearly see how that customer's moved through the process. Now, our initial focus is very much around delivering a standard profile to OpenGI OCC clients, which is a de facto profile that we've got across a couple of dozen insurance brokers currently. So we're implementing that as part of this partnership. But there is an option to build a bespoke profile. So if you wanted to do something unique, something slightly different, we can quite easily build a profile that that supports any kind of unique requirement that you might have. And there is also an option, and something we're certainly keen to consider is a second wash, what we'd call a second wash option, which if you already have an existing relationship with another supplier through OpenClientCheck, there is some value potentially in sitting us behind them in the process. So if you can't match an individual against supplier number 1, your primary supplier, coming out to us as supplier number 2 to get that marginal uplift in match rates, well prove quite beneficial. So that's something that we're looking to deliver as part of this relationship moving forwards. Thanks, Jez. So this next slide shows you the profile. So this is ultimately what we're delivering and what you would you'd be utilising as part of the process. So there's 6 decision bands. Each one of those decision bands has some decision text and relates to an OpenClientCheck score. So you can see here, obviously the 6 decision bands listed down the left-hand side, and then across there's an asterisk showing which piece of information we've matched in each scenario. So obviously the first one, alert no match, fairly self-explanatory. We've not found anything. We've not even found an address. We flagged that as an alert because if we can't find a property, then there's some concerns around the validity of the information that's been supplied. The second one is where we have actually matched everything we set out to match originally, which is name, address, and date of birth. But the date of birth that we found is different to the date of birth that's been presented. So we are able to kind of return that as a mismatch, which again we tag up as an alert because it could be indicative of misrepresentation. The next 2 we categorise as refers with an OpenClientCheck score of 30, which is we've only matched the address, nothing else, or we've matched the address and we've matched the surname. So we found the family name, but we can't find the individual. Again, they could be representative of misrepresentation. So, young person using mum and dad's address as an example. So we find the family name, but they live in a much higher risk area. But they know if they present mum and dad's address, they're likely to see a cheaper premium. And then the 2 that you see at the bottom there are what we consider passes. So we've matched the individual. In one instance, we're matching the individual to date of birth level, and the other, we're matching them to forename level, but missing the date of birth. Thanks, Jez.
Great, thank you. That's lovely. So this point, what we'll do is we'll show you a demonstration of what the GB Group system looks like when we integrate with it through the back office. So what I'll do is I'll hand you over to Christina. There are a few questions that have been asked. We've got a question session coming up after this, so we'll adjust those questions with the others after this demonstration.
So we can see here the OpenClientCheck back office, and if first of all we look at the configuration settings that we have. So once OpenClientCheck has been activated within your core back office, from your maintenance menu within broker configuration, you will see the option of OpenClientCheck configuration. On entering there initially, you will see a list of the providers that you have opted to sign with. And with this list, what we can see there is we can see the detail of the code of the check. So we've got GB here, the enablement status, whether it's licensed, and then we can see the description. So if we look to activate the GB Group check, if we select that line, so the first page of configuration is where we detail whether or not we would like to enable this particular service. We can then enter in our scores below. So as per Russell's previous slide where he was referencing the scoring card, you can see this is where you can specify the threshold that you'd like to set. The action that you would like to take if the service is unavailable. So if you have any problems calling out, do you want it to stop attempting to make the call, or would you like to see a warning? How long is your check valid for? So if I perform a check at the point that I've given somebody a quote within my back office and they don't actually take the policy out for another 30 days, would I like to perform the check again before I issue cover? We then have the opportunity to confirm that we would like to amend a referral immediately. And if we are amending a referral immediately, would we like to have any control or permissions over that? And this is where you can enter in your standard authorization codes for the referral amendment, and then who can view the results of OpenClientCheck. What we have at the bottom of the screen is a way of identifying a commercial client. The check that we're referencing today is for a personal identification. At the point that we introduce a commercial check, this is where you'll be able to set the identification method. So the next screen we have as part of the configuration is when we would like to automate the service. So the first page that we have is for our prospects. So for APM, I would like to automatically trigger the service at the point that I pre-authorize a payment. And you can see there, if it's below my 50% threshold that I've set on the initial page, do I want it to stop the sale, or do I just want it to provide a warning? Do we want the check to be triggered automatically at the point of conversion? So that would be when you are pressing the Make Live or pressing Escape and 5, or when you are using the Transfer or the Escape and G options. Do we want the check to be automated at the point that we create a new prospect, at the point that we create a new quote, or as part of my post-quote workflow? This is for the automated triggers, and a manual search can be triggered at any point at all. If we take ourselves onto the next page of configuration, these are your choices for when it will check and live client. So if you aren't using the prospect area, perform this check when I create a new client, a new policy, when I launch into one of the quote engines, so motor, home, truck or bike directly from core, at the point that I attempt to produce an MTA quotation, and then you can see we've got the creation of accounts transactions, backs payment plans, premium finance, or at the point that we generate a period renewals list. So those are the automated trigger points. If we just abandon the configuration and take ourselves onto a client file. So we can see here that we have our client, so we have a full name and address completed, we have a date of birth and postcode. So from the client file, to manually trigger the check, if we select OpenClientCheck, it will show the services that we have enabled. And this is also how we will access the audit trail for all previous searches that we've undertaken. So if we choose to trigger the GB check at this stage, it will make a call off to the OpenClientCheck hub and pass across Alid's details. And then we'll wait for a response from GB Group. So that's confirming that the check was successful. And if we want to see the results, then this is where we can use the View Previous Client Checks. So you can see here the check that we've just performed. So we have a 90% score with a pass, the date and the time, and the operator that's ran the search. And then we can see the report that's returned back. So confirming where we've been able to find Alid according to those 4 data sources that Russell's just referenced.
Cool, that's great. Thank you very much for that, Christina. So I guess the next point really is to field some questions. So we can just have a look there. One question that had come up is basically a question regarding the kind of charging mechanisms of the third-party providers. So at the moment we've got 4 providers on board. In terms of the Experian lookup, we resell the Experian lookup directly. With the other 3 providers, they will effectively contract directly with you to provide you with that particular service. Basically, as far as they're concerned, it's up to them. It's between yourselves and the third party to contract appropriately. Some of those providers will contract and for a figure at the beginning of the year, and some of them will do it on a kind of transactional basis based on a kind of a regular monthly charge. So there's lots of different ways of doing it, and it's obviously between yourselves and them to negotiate something that's suitable for you and that will work for your business. So sorry, I know it can get a bit confusing that we're running 2 pricing models for this, but I think moving forward, I suspect that some of the other lookups that we provide through OCC will be resold by OpenGI at which point we can provide you with every little bit of information about that. Where they are not resold but they are available through the third party, then it would be between yourselves and the third party to negotiate that.
We've got a question here for yourself, Russ, which is how often is the data updated, and do you have any idea of a percentage of people that could be moving during that time that could create a mismatch?
Good question. So the data set, if you could just go back one slide actually, Jez. Here we go. So the data sets are updated on different frequencies. So the electoral roll and the edited electoral roll are updated annually, obviously. So that's a relatively static file. Credit header data, we receive weekly updates, and the national ID register are daily updates. So it's not an easy question to answer, because it depends which file we would match against. But there is potentially there is always I guess a challenge around recent movers. Just to set some expectation, I guess we would positively identify 80 to 85% of individuals. So we'd be able to pass 80 to 85%, depending on how, I guess, whether there's any niches around your customer base. The remaining 15%, anywhere between 3 and 5%, would sit in the alert categories, and then the remaining 10% would be refers. So the kind of false positives that the question's referring to would it would be 10% of your your customer population, if you like, where we would see that challenge. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Thanks very much for that. We don't have any more questions, I think, to cover off. So the next thing for us to do, if it's okay, is we'll launch another poll just so that we can get your feelings on what we've just been explaining about the opportunity of using the GB group lookup through OpenClientCheck. So we've just launched that now. Just give you a few seconds to respond to that. Okay, that's great. That's very good. Thank you very much for that. So let's move on. We've just done the questions, just done the poll. So right, the next thing to run through is, okay, so potential additional GB group lookup. So just as a reminder, the idea of this is that these are not definitely going to happen. They are things that we're exploring at the moment. And obviously a key thing really in terms of exploring them is to work out what kind of level of value they might have for our user base. So that's where I'm hoping that you'll be able to give us some feedback on these. So the first one that I'll cover off is bank account verification. So we can potentially take bank account details, we can feed them through the same route in terms of the automated or manual check through OCC and provide them to GB Group. Now, Russ, would you be able to just cover off quickly what kind of verification processes you can cover with GB Group data?
Yeah, absolutely. So so it's a two-stage process. So the first stage really is around validation of the account and sort code. So the first thing we do is, does that bank account and sort code, can they exist together? Do those two things belong together? And we do that because we need to make sure we've got clean bank account information before we move to the next stage. But what we also provide in that first validation stage is the ability to load your own black and white lists. So if you've had known bad outcomes from a particular bank account and sort code, you can load those in and decision them out before moving any further forward through the process. Likewise, if you've seen and experienced good bank accounts, you can move those those through. It also allows you to draw a radius around the bank branch and the application's address. So let's say, for instance, the individual that you're insuring is providing an address of Sheffield, but the bank branch that they've provided is in Cornwall. That might be a cause for concern for you. So we plot that radius and allow a broker to decision on it however they see fit. What we can also do there is confirm the types of payments that particular bank account can accept. So if you're about to put a customer on cover and offer them a direct debit scheme, knowing whether that bank account will allow direct debit payments is quite crucial. And we've seen some test work recently where accounts don't accept direct debits, or albeit they've taken a policy out through that payment method. So it's designed to help protect that. Once we've validated the bank account, what we then do is we verify that it belongs to the individual. So going out into sources of credit data, we would then say, okay, we've got a bank account and sort code that's genuine. We now need to know that it belongs to Russell Dixon. So we do that matching and provide granularity back out, which would then obviously be converted into the open client check scoring methods. The reason for this, and I guess why we've raised it with OpenGI originally, is that we're being approached by brokers who are starting to experience a type of fraud, more kind of softer fraud, which is individuals are setting up policies providing bank account, NHS, charity bank account details in order to just get on cover with no intentions to pay. They can then drive around for whatever period, 6 to 8 weeks, without being picked up on the cameras or by the insurers, and then they repeat the process with the next broker. So it's something that we're starting to see a bit more of. So hence the reason we raised it with OpenGI.
That's great. Thanks for that, Russ. Just before we go do that, whether there's anybody who's got any questions on that. So if you want to type any questions, give you a couple of seconds if you've got any questions on the bank account verification idea. Nothing so far. Now, obviously, you can carry on adding questions whenever you like, and then we will just queue them up and get them in the next slot. But while that's going on, what we're going to do is launch another survey just to see what you think about that. So this is just to see how interested you are in the bank account check. Great, that's lovely. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so that covers that. The next one on is driving license number validation. So this is another potential thing that we could look at doing. Obviously, with the My License initiative coming out at some point, hopefully this year, it is likely that we'll end up with insurers making decisions, rating decisions around data that's received as a result of having captured a driving license number. So we already have the driving license number as part of the data capture in our system. The idea of this is to provide, GB Group have got a way of validating that driving license number to make sure it's accurate. So when you are actually entering that data, whether it's entered online, there is a way of validating it to make sure that that number is actually correct. The benefit from our point of view is that when insurers are using that data to make decisions on rating, if they weren't to find a match on the driving license number at some point in the future, it could end up being detrimental to the quote. So that's why we thought maybe it's potentially something that's worth exploring. So again, Russ, could you just just cover that off in terms of the GB Group angle, please?
Yeah, sure. So, so I guess the only things I can add to that just really is our view is that we kind of see this sitting in that capture point in the process. So on entry, as the customer is filling in the 4 parts of a driving license number, ultimately, we can ensure that as the data is being inputted and before they move to the next field, that the information they've typed in is accurate and consistent. And then when we get to the point where all 4 parts have been entered, we then have this unique ability. Yeah, there's only us in the DVLA that can do this, but we can do a full integrity check of the driving license number. So what that actually means is there's 2 random digits at the end of a driving license number, and they're checksum digits. So they're randomly generated based on the string of characters that appear before them in the sequence. Now, if you're trying to make up a driving license number, it's nigh on impossible to guess those last two digits. So we can very, very quickly and at point of entry confirm whether the information that's been entered is A, is it a correct format, and B, is it a genuine and authentic driving license number. And then we can triangulate all of that information together to say, okay, we know that it's genuine, move on, or it's not genuine, this part of the driving license number is the issue, and we'd point out which element is the problem so the customer can correct it.
Cool, thanks very much for that. We do have a question actually that came up basically saying, can you access Northern Ireland driving license data in your database? Presumably you cover Northern Ireland as well as the UK, is that correct?
No, we don't actually. So Northern Ireland driving license numbers are a different format to the ones that that we see. So no, at the moment we can't support Northern Ireland. They would sit outside of our kind of remit at the moment.
Okay. Any more questions on this? Just give you a few seconds just to see if you've got any questions on the driving license number validation. While you're thinking about that, we'll launch the poll as well, just to see how interested you might be in that level of validation. Okay, we have one more question. Just having a look. Okay, the question that's been asked is whether the validation through GB Group would give some kind of information on points on driving license or accidents and convictions, things like that. Now, just to make you aware of this, the idea of this validation through GB Group is just to make sure that the driving license number is valid. In terms of the lookup that anybody might do, whether it's either the insurer or whether OpenGI does it on behalf of insurers, that at the moment would go straight between my license, which is the DVLA, and it would go straight back to the OpenGI quote engine. As I understand it at the moment, there is no provision to share that data with brokers. It's something that's purely available at the quote engine level. So it's effectively available to the rating rules, so that the rating rules, as designed by the insurer, can make use of that data. We have queried this to see whether we can try and find a way of getting some of that information back to you as brokers, and it's a query that we've got raised with the My License team. We do sit on the panel, so that we do get a chance to kind of suggest things and raise issues. So at the moment, unfortunately, I don't think we can get that level of data back for brokers. It's purely for use by insurers at point of quote. I say that's something that's going to come separately and potentially later on this year. What we're talking about now is purely about having a service where we can make sure that that driving license number is accurate. So that's what the validation would be for. So the last point to cover off then is a phone number validation and append. So the idea of this is being able to reliably get hold of a phone number both landline or mobile, to contact your customers on. So this could be for many different reasons. It could be that at renewal they've changed their number and not told you about it, or it could be that you've received their data through an aggregator import, and given that you, assuming you have permission to contact that customer, you can potentially make sure that you've got a valid phone number to contact them on, and therefore potentially gain an advantage when trying to close a deal from some online business. So literally this is a way of getting hold of phone numbers through the data that you've already got on prospects on your database. So again, Russ, is there anything else you'd like to cover off on that?
Just a little bit, I guess, a little bit more detail around how it works really. So it's a bit of a two-stage process from our point of view. So the first thing we do is we take the customer information and the telephone number that you already hold, if you hold one, and then we search across. We hold about 800 million different mobile telephone numbers within our organisation, and obviously multiples of those, are associated to the same individual or organisation, etc. But what we do is we would take Jez Westerman's details and we go away and say, okay, A, does that telephone number still belong to Jez? Yes or no? And if it doesn't, can we replace it with something else? So if he's given us a landline that no longer belongs to him, can we replace it with another landline? Or do we have any mobile phone telephone numbers that we can replace with? We then make that replacement, and then we ping those telephone numbers, all obviously legally. The phone doesn't ever ring. It's more a case of a connection type ping to basically say, if we were to call that number, is it going to ring ultimately? So we know we're going to provide you with kind of appended data, but also data that that's effective. And that's pretty much how that works.
That's great, it's lovely. Again, I'm sure you know the drill by now. If you've got any questions, if you'd like to type them in now, and while you're thinking of questions, we'll launch the poll so that we can assess your interest in this idea. That's great, thank you very much. That's really great. Now, from our point of view, that's the end of the webinar. So we've obviously covered off the existing ID check that we've got built in with GB Group. We've covered off a few extra ideas that we might want to do at some point in the future, if they look like they're feasible and people are keen on them. I'd just like to say thanks very much for coming on board. It's very grateful for you sharing your opinions with us. Is there anything else you guys would like to say?
Thank you very much.
Russ, anything else you'd like to raise? Or
no, just another thank you from me, Jez. Thanks everybody for giving us some time.
That's great. And a couple of people have said, can they have a copy of the presentation? That's absolutely the case. So we will be sending out a copy of the presentation. And also in terms of the new ideas, as and when we get some information about whether or not we will be moving them forwards or not, we'll also let you know as well, because obviously you may be interested in knowing whether they're going to happen or not. So thanks very much, and have a lovely Monday evening. Thanks very much.
The organizer has ended the session, and this call will be disconnected.